Welcome back, everyone, to another Captain Patriot video. Hope you guys are having a wonderful day today. I'm taking a look at a new video, Fired Employee Whistleblows on Google's Political Culture. So with all the news about Google, having been found out to be a monopoly and violating antitrust laws, I thought this would be a good time to kind of review, an employee's stance or experience at Google and the political culture surrounding, one of the largest, if not the largest tech companies to exist ever. I've already watched the video, but I'm going to play it and kind of pause her out and add my thoughts because I think this is really interesting and it adds a good insight into what a lot of tech companies' culture is like for people who might not be in tech or might not know. This gives a really good depiction of what it's like. So let's take a listen.
So I had been working at Google for about 4 years, and I noticed that we had some inclusion problems on our team. Some people wouldn't go to our group lunches or speak up in our team meetings. So I went to a diversity and inclusion conference at Google. Unfortunately, rather than talk about how to really include everyone on the team, it just talked about diversity, and specifically racial and gender diversity at Google. And they said, the population has 50% women, Google has 20% women, therefore sexism. And that was really how deep their argument went.
I'm going to pause here real quick. Yeah. So, it's interesting, right? Because when they say they care about diversity, equity, and inclusion, specifically the D&I, diversity and inclusion, they're not really talking about men or white people. So, right, when they're talking about diversity, they're talking about diversity of anyone but white and anyone but male. So that's typically what's being talked about, but they're putting it under the guise of, oh, we want inclusion, we want diversity, but we don't want white people to be a part of that diversity. We only want, black and brown people, and we only want women and trans people and gay people, right? That's really what they're talking about. They're not referencing anyone who makes up the vast majority of society today, especially in the United States of America. They're really talking about a very specific subset of the overall population. And then when it comes to women too, right? They treat women as if women are a minority in society, when in reality, they make up 50% of society. So it's like really interesting when they say, okay, well, 50% of society is women. We expect 50% of our workforce to be women. That's an unrealistic expectation for a technology company when technology is mainly, so majority of people going to school for tech degrees or for computer science degrees are male. And so naturally, you're going to have fewer women who are able to work in tech roles, specifically anything software or hardware or engineering related, STEM related, really. And so it's like, it's actually impossible for every company to have a 50-50 split down the middle as a reflection of society because there's just not that many women that are going into STEM careers, specifically computer science or related fields. So this entire idea that you can have or force a 50-50 split down the center is mathematically impossible. And you would expect a company like Google, right, a company of computer scientists to know this, or at least to be able to figure this out, that it's impossible. But I don't think that the people with the actual tech degrees are the ones making these decisions. I think it's people in HR, specifically HR's majority of people working in HR are women, which is perfectly fine. But it gives kind of like there's a discrepancy between what HR thinks is possible and what is actually possible because they're not willing to communicate with the engineering team and say, hey, what can we actually do to increase the number of women or minorities on this team without lowering the quality of person we're hiring, right? And so, this idea that you can just force a 50-50 split to me is like, I don't even understand how anyone could come to this conclusion that it's possible. But apparently Google, of all companies, one of the largest and I would assume smartest group of people, couldn't figure this out.
And so they went through all these different things like microaggressions and unconscious bias, and
I love this. Okay, I love this. If you're conscious of your unconscious bias, can't you negate that? Can't you have self-control and be like, I'm not going to treat this person differently because of their skin color, even though I might feel off about it, right? If you're conscious of it, if you actually are aware of it, it shouldn't be an issue. And I feel like most people nowadays, because we're constantly being pounded with this idea that we all have unconscious bias, and whether or not that's true, if we're constantly hearing that fact, I think it would be pretty understandable for people to be aware of that unconscious bias and either negate it or fight against it. And I feel like most people are pretty on top of that. Like I don't see a lot of this, right? I don't see a lot of bias towards people of color or people of, I don't know, whatever you want to say. Like, I just don't. It's not something I see from other people towards other people, let alone to me. If anything, there's more unconscious bias towards to men and to white people, which is really interesting and honestly quite sad. You know, you can't fight racism with more racism. That's not going to solve a problem. And you're not going to be able to solve racism by treating every white person as if they're racist or every man as if they're sexist. Right. So it's like, you know, it's like, it just doesn't make any sense. It just doesn't make any sense.
So that is why we only have 20% women. And
I love how the cameraman zooms in on the person who's obviously, well, I don't need to say that. I mean, come on. I mean, it's bad to read or to judge a book by its cover, but you can, you know, like there is a certain type of look that goes along with sometimes with people, and you can make a pretty educated guess on where that person falls politically or what their ideology is based off of their look, right? Because they're basically equipping themselves with, you know, all the tenets of what you would expect from someone on that side so that they can be identified as an ally or, you know, or whatever, right? And so that's their personal choice, which good for them, but then you can't be upset when someone notices that and identifies you a certain type of way.
After that, they asked for feedback, and, you know, I had actually been doing biology in grad school before going to Google, and I knew a little bit about psychology and actually why women might not be, or why there may be fewer women interested in tech. And so I wrote this, the document, and I really explained, okay, these factors we have to take into account if we want to change Google to make it more appealing to more women.
I like that, right? He's using his actual education to identify real root cause issues as to why the company is struggling with meeting their diversity quota. And I mean, it's just like, of course, naturally, Google is going to shit all over it and take away his career. So,
and how we could actually fix some of these workplace issues and remove gender from the discussion. So I asked them, okay, what do you think about this document? Am I just in my own echo chamber, or is there actually something here?
It's interesting, right? He's asking people for criticism. He's asking people that he works with to review the document he's written and to offer feedback, right? So he's seeking out, you know, a second or a third opinion because he himself understands that he could be implicitly biased. He understands that this is exactly what I was saying, is that people understand that they have unconscious biases and then they do stuff like this. Are you going to say that this person is racist, right? If he's going out of his way and asking, hey, does this make sense? Am I in my own echo chamber? Am I off the mark? Like, can you proofread this and tell me, like, am I over the top? Am I overreacting? Right? People who are hateful don't do this. People who actually despise people of a certain race or a certain gender do not do this. They don't ask other people for their input on them, right? They live in their own little world, their own little bubble, and they can't take criticism at all. So clearly this is not one of those people.
There's actually something here, and it just exploded. Well, so once it leaked out, all the top executives were sending out these disparaging emails about just how harmful it is. Don't read it. This is not what we stand for. And
it's the harm thing, right? It's like you're not being harmed by reading something. You're not. Sorry.
On Monday, they called me up and said, hey, James Damore, you know, you're fired for perpetuating gender stereotypes.
Wow, they called you at home on the phone.
It's interesting, right? Because everyone wants to say stereotypes are bad, but stereotypes exist for a reason, right? Like they do. They come from some sort of truth to some degree, right? So this is so, I don't know, this is so interesting, you know? Like people want to reject stereotypes because it makes them feel a certain type of way, but they don't want to actually think about the stereotype or where it comes from or why it exists in the first place. And it's like people, it seems like a lot of people just don't want to understand. They want to remain in darkness. It just blows me away.
I had been at home because I received some violent threats from coworkers.
From your coworkers?
Yeah.
Let's look at differences between men and women that are explicitly anatomical and physiological. Are men taller than women on average? Does anyone take offense at that fact?
Stop. Put your hand down. You look silly. Come on. You could just look that up. On average, men are taller than women. That's. What the fuck? Does anyone take offense to that? Instantly, a hand goes up. It's like that to me is the same as you asking someone, does anyone take offense to me saying that the sky is blue? And someone raises their hand. It's the same thing. How are you going to get mad at this? How are you going to get mad at something that's objectively true? I mean, that statement that the average male is taller than the average female, that is an objectively true statement, and there's no personal bias there. There's nothing to be upset about. There's nothing that should hurt your feelings. If your feelings are hurt, you need to do some serious soul searching, because in no way should you be getting upset at something like that. Okay. Like there's nothing wrong with that. If you have a inherent hatred towards yourself, if you're upset by that statement that the average male is taller than the average female, like there's something seriously wrong with your mentality or how you think and how you talk to yourself. Your internal dialogue has to be off. I can't imagine you're having a very positive conversation with yourself if something like that offends you. I don't understand. Like, I don't understand why that should be offensive. If you're so emotionally attached to the height thing and that already sets you off, I mean, I don't know, like go outside and touch grass maybe.
Are you irritated? So I would say you could be irritated by it. You could be irritated by the fact that women have to be the ones to gestate and lactate. You could be irritated by a lot of truths.
Yeah, you could be irritated that women menstruate, right? If you're a girl, I'm glad I'm not, man. That shit would suck. Every month for a week, you're bleeding? Bro, fuck that. I don't want to do that. That sucks. Like, respect to you guys for putting up with that, man. But like, I don't understand. Like, I could absolutely understand why someone would be irritated at the fact that they didn't choose that, but it's part of their physiology. It's part of their natural biology that happens. I can understand being irritated, but like to be offended or to be like, or to just reject it outright and say it's not even true. I don't understand how you could live like that.
Like taking offense.
Oh, they're mad. They're mad. I can't. You know their pronouns are they, them. Okay, like just by looking, you can say their pronouns are they, them. And if that's your choice, good for you. I don't have to participate in your religion. I have my own. Thank you very much.
Response that is rejection of reality. So
yeah, that's the big one.
They're different on height. They're different on muscle mass. They're different on where fat is deposited on our bodies.
Even our brains are different. Even our brains are different. And for people who want to disagree with that, you can't look at men and women and say, okay, there's all these physical differences. There's all these actual verifiable differences that we can look at down to the DNA, down to the chromosomes, right? Differences in chromosomes. And then at the same time say that, oh, men and women think exactly the same, right? Like you can't, I can't understand how people can have that argument, because if you look at men and women, right? If they're biologically different, physically different, why is it such a stretch to suggest that they also think in different ways? And each is complementary to the other. I don't want to get into this like one is better than the other. They're different, and making a comparison between the two, or rather attempting to suggest that they're both the same, is actually more harmful to women than it is to men. And I think that that's one of the big issues that women are dealing with right now, is this idea that women have to, or are expected to act and talk and think like men. And it's just like, I don't know. This is all just, it's part of that like woke culture, but progressivism and, you know, politeness culture, I guess. I don't know, whatever you want to call it.
Our brains are also different.
Okay, yeah, I don't know if you heard it, but the speaker just said that our brains are also different. It's true. And naturally, men and women think differently, and that's perfectly okay. It's like we're just talking about what is. We're not talking about. No one is suggesting that that's wrong or bad or one is better than the other.
So there are some binaries.
Security!
Dude, I can't believe this, that these people are so emotionally charged at someone just talking about their ideas and what they think and what they believe, that they're causing violence and have to be physically removed. I mean, if you're not capable of just sitting and listening, and okay, you might disagree, that's fine, but to be disruptive is beyond me.
Oh, they shut off the volume. Can you hear? Can everybody hear? All right, well, we're going to raise our voices. The conversation's going to go on.
Okay, even the women in there have been brainwashed.
I have a really good.
Dude, look at this thing. I'm sorry, but like, come on. What, like, it's just like, you stick out like a sore thumb. It's just, okay. Now I'm just being mean. Sorry.
I have a really good patch on my jacket. No, you want to film my patches on my jacket.
A lot of it was just trying to help our culture at Google, and but if you look at the surveys now, it seems like about 80% of conservatives feel like they can't speak at all now, which is really disappointing because
Yeah, I mean, that's 100% true. That is 1000% true. And I honestly, I feel like that's a low ball, 80%. I feel like that's lower than what the actual number is, because truth is, if you're conservative, you're already hated in society. You're already disrespected. You're already seen as like a racist or a Nazi or a bigot or a homophobe or something. People will instantly label you with all these different horrible labels that no one should be labeled with unless they are those things. And that's why the term, racist or bigot or homophobe has lost pretty much all its meaning now, right? They're almost like silly haha words to me, where it's like, okay, dude, like, you said nothing, right? If you call me that, you've said nothing. You haven't disagreed with a single one of my points. You haven't told me why I'm wrong. You've just called a bunch of names out and then thought that like means something. And I think a lot of conservatives now, specifically, coming up to the election, I think are being a little bit more open and honest with themselves and with other people around them with their beliefs because of how bad things have gotten. And it's a shame that it had to get this point, but at least it's happening, So, I mean, it sucks when you're in a workplace and you are making a genuine effort to help and you're asking people for input on what you're writing and you're saying, hey, these are the steps I've come up with using my education and my knowledge on the subject on how to improve the situation here at Google. Can you guys look at this? And then immediately being labeled as hateful or racist or sexist and saying you're reinforcing gender stereotypes as if that's a bad thing, right? Like, they don't even say that, like, why is reinforcing gender stereotypes a bad thing? Can you explain why that is?
The psychological safety, which is something that I cite in the document, is just being able to bring your whole self to work and feeling like you can speak up without being harshly judged. And that was, one of the main measures that they saw actually improve team performance. But that's precisely what we don't have now.
Well, yeah, it's the opposite of that. It's only ideas that agree with the status quo idea, right? That already agrees with the mainstream idea. And I think that's kind of like the issue, is that like any other idea outside that realm is immediately labeled as something as hateful. So it's just, you can't argue with these people because they don't want to have the conversation. They're going to label you a bigot so they don't have to talk to you, right? They remove any responsibility on their part to actually have to listen and have a conversation with you. And the result is this: people losing their jobs and the work culture becoming more and more toxic, rather than just being like, hey, we're going to have an honest conversation about this. If you talk shit or if you're hateful towards anyone, whether they're conservative or liberal, sorry, you're out of here. But no, it's a one side. It's rules for thee, but not for me sort of situation.
Which is really unfortunate.
I am reacting that way because I want to keep you safe.
God, no. And of course, right, the blue-haired white lady is telling the black police officer she wants to keep him safe, right? And that's why she's there causing a ruckus and causing issues. Yeah, okay, dude. Okay, bro. Okay. Live in your little fantasy land where you're like, I don't know, whatever, man. You're stupid.
You're too close. I can't actually
So dumb.
get you with this lens if you want to be in.
That's really unfortunate.
Oh, good on the cameraman. You're a little too close. I can't get you with this lens. I don't have a wide-angled lens. I'm sorry. You're gonna have to step like a mile back so I can get all of you in this camera shot. I'm just kidding. That was a fat joke. Sorry.
I'm going to show
Tell me about your thoughts.
whatever, I guess
Tell me
that's
about
fine.
your thoughts.
My thoughts?
Yeah, on the event. Why did you do what you did?
So, if I were to tell you any thoughts about this event, it would be more than this event is worth, honestly.
Okay, then add your thoughts and make the event more valuable. Like, you're being presented with an opportunity to get your voice out there, and rather than do that, you want to try and act like you're so superior that you can't even voice your opinion? What? You're being given a platform. You're being handed a platform on a silver platter, and you're too good to take it. And yet, everyone at this convention is hateful and bigoted, but you don't want to spread some love and kindness because you're so loving and so kind. Like, I don't understand. Like that. Like, of course, this person's not going to say it because they have nothing of value to say. They don't even know why they believe what they believe.
Like, you can't.
But you've come here. You've come here.
You can't argue against, like, what is a fact. Like,
yeah, but it was facts that pissed you off in the first place. You raised your hand and you said you were offended by a fact. Like, okay, dude, it's so stupid. This is what are you supposed to do with this? How are you supposed to talk to this? What are you supposed to say? Well, like, how can you make a like? It's like, and there are so many people who think this way and act this way. Okay, and they exist on both the right and the left. But just my personal experience, I have seen far more people like this on the left than on the right.
I don't pay $2,000 of student fee funds to argue that a triangle is round.
What? What? Huh? The fuck? What does that mean?
Yeah.
And they're arguing, not only are they arguing that the memo wasn't set, you know what, I'm not even going to engage in that shit.
He didn't even mention
Run.
the
deserve
parts
it.
of the memo that were, in fact, accurate to what they are portraying him as, which is saying that there was biological
But that
determinism.
actually doesn't matter.
Wait, is there not biological determinism? I'm confused. So your genetics don't determine anything about you? So the genes that your mother and your father passed to you, right? That doesn't determine a single thing about you, like eye color, height, hair color, skin color. None of that is determined by your genetics. Okay, got it. Okay.
That actually doesn't matter, because this has never been about James Damore. It's been about freedom of speech, and it's been about exercising power.
It's funny. You want, like, people like this will say, "Oh, it's about freedom of speech," and then they'll not let the person they disagree with talk, or they'll try and get them banned off of, or they'll fire them. Right? Like, someone will have freedom of speech, and then they'll be fired from their job for exercising their right to freedom of speech. Right? It's not about actually understanding the opposing side's views. It's about shitting on them and then trying to get them fired. It's trying to ruin their life. That's what it is.
I'm oppressed. He's oppressed.
They kept us strict.
She's telling the black dude he's oppressed. Dude, these people are so brainwashed. Like, super duper brainwashed.
Hold on, everyone had to keep the same ideas, and anyone that steers away is seen as sort of an apostate from this religion, and you have to punish the apostate to keep everyone together.
Yeah, you have to punish the dissenting party, right? You have anyone who speaks out of line, right? Anyone who goes against the status quo or who stands up to the tyranny that is already in place must be punished and made example of, so that other people know not to do that. Okay, that's what it is. Okay, let's be honest. These companies, they're tyrannical. Okay, they're tyrannical in how they're run. They're tyrannical from within as well as externally. You can see that from how they hide certain search results. They manipulate elections, and it's like they get off with it, right? They get a slap on the wrist, and then they're off the hook. Okay, and the exterior behavior is always going to be the same as the interior behavior, or rather, the interior behavior will be 10 times worse. So this is just it's just sad. It's just sad that we're at this point where you can't have a conversation without someone, one, labeling you as something horrendous, and two, people are being punished for voicing their opinions. If you think the opinion is wrong, explain why. Don't be like that person on the camera who is too arrogant or too full of themselves and think they're above explaining things to you. If they had a good point to say, they would have said it, but they didn't, because they didn't have a good point. So that's it. Oh man, I grow weary. I grow weary of these people. All right, folks, I hope you enjoyed today's video. Take care. Enjoy the rest of your day. Bye-bye.